So, to all the participants, I'm sure we had this fantastic interactive session, and we would like to keep the momentum going and continue with these interactive sessions. If you have any questions, you can always feel free to email it to us and we can try and get them answered. But with that, we would like to move on to the next part of our schedule. We have another lecture planned for you. This is by Professor Manaswita Bose. She's an associate professor in the Department of Energy, Science and Engineering at IIT Bombay. And her research interests include the study of the flow of granular materials, fluid solid suspension, and thermal storage. She's worked previously in Monash University and ZS Numerics, and she has done her MS and PhD from IISc, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Um, Professor Manaswita is now online. Professor Manaswita, I request you to please address the audience and
So, ma'am, I think she's on her way to the lab. So she said we can just play her recording.
I just saw that she has joined. So
okay, right. So Divyesh is sharing the recorded lecture, and she'll be available for questions.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, ma'am has joined. So
I have joined, so
okay,
it's
ma'am.
okay.
Thanks, Shweta, for the introduction. And welcome to this last session of the day. After the beautiful talk on multiphase flow, we are again back to the classroom setup. This session, that is the first session on heat transfer, is going to be dedicated on introduction to heat transfer, recapitulation of some basic concepts. So the learning objectives are two. That is to gather a brief overview of principle of heat transfer, and we will discuss only two modes, conduction and convection, and to learn an approach toward the problem solving. Now, let us start with the first law of thermodynamics itself. For a closed system, we write the first law as delta E, that is the change in the total energy of the system, as the difference between the heat transfer to the system and the work done by the system. Now, if the change in the kinetic energy and the potential energy can be neglected, then the first law of thermodynamics can be read as change in the internal energy is equal to the difference between the heat supplied to the system and work done by the system. Now, how do we define the internal energy itself? Change in internal energy is the negative of the adiabatic work done. Here, the convention is used that work done by the system is positive. Now, for open system, where both mass and energy interaction through the boundaries are allowed or permitted, first law is written as the net flow of the mechanical energy, that is the kinetic energy, potential energy, and the pressure volume work, plus the internal energy. So the net flow of this total energy through the control surfaces or through the boundaries equals to the rate of the heat transferred to the control volume and minus the rate of the work done. For open system, we define another state variable, thermodynamic state variable, that is enthalpy, which is internal energy, plus PV. V is the specific volume, and enthalpy is related to temperature as Cp delta T for ideal gases. For ideal gases, enthalpy is function of temperature alone. Let us take a more closer look at the definition of the control volume itself. For a system, the rate representation of the first law of thermodynamics can be written as the total derivative of the total energy, total time derivative of the total energy, that is d est dt, is equal to q dot minus w dot. This equation is written for a system. When that is translated on a control volume, we need to rewrite this particular equation on a control volume framework. For that, as a first step, we write the extensive variable in terms of the intensive variable. So extensive variable E here, the energy, we have to write mass specific, in the mass specific term, rho E hat dV. And what do we mean by control volume? A system is an identifiable mass with a physical or an imaginary boundary. Now, a control volume is fixed in space, and the way it is depicted is pictorially. Imagine this circle here, which is fixed in space, and the system, say at time t minus delta t, comes and occupies a part of the control volume. At time t, it completely fills the control volume. At time t plus delta t, it almost leaves the control volume, but still it is partially filled. And at a later time, the system completely leaves the control volume. So there is a flow associated with it. The system itself is flowing. Now, when we write or when we transform the equation, that is the total derivative, with the help of a theorem known as Reynolds transport theorem, we arrive at an equation which reads like partial derivative of time integral over the control volume rho E dV plus integral over the control surface rho E v dot n dA is equal to minus of integral over the control surface n dot q dot dA minus w dot. The physical interpretation of the first term here is this signifies the time derivative, a rate of change of time of energy within the control volume, and the second term tells the net flux of energy to the control volume. Now, if we follow these 4 steps, that is, we write down different expressions of work done, different types of work done on the control volume, then apply the divergence theorem, then subtract the mechanical energy conservation equation from the total energy conservation equation, and then substitute appropriate thermodynamic relations, then we obtain the conventional form of energy conservation equation. This is the form of equation that you are familiar with. Rho Cp, partial time derivative of temperature, plus rho Cp u dot grad T plus is equal to K Laplacian of temperature. Now, suppose there is no flow at all, so U is 0. Then we have the heat conduction equation. If there is a volumetric flow generation within the system, suppose there is a fuel, so then we can add the volumetric heat generation term with the equation. Then the heat conduction with source equation reads like rho Cp, partial time derivative of temperature, which is equal to K del square T plus Q dot xt. X is a space coordinate here and T is the time coordinate. Now, before we get into solving this equation, we will understand the physical significance of the properties and the field variable itself. So let us start with temperature. Temperature is a measure of the fluctuating energy of the constituent molecule of the material. Larger the fluctuating energy is, higher the temperature reads. So this is the physical significance of temperature. Mode of heat conduction is transfer of thermal energy due to molecular motion. The dominant mode of motion in solid is vibration, rotation in liquids, and the dominant mode of motion in gas, that is the transfer of thermal energy in gas, is translation. So the only mode of heat transfer in ideal gas is actually the translational mode, right? Now here comes the question that if conduction relates to the discrete nature of material, how did we even write a continuum description of the heat transfer equation? Isn't it? Let us do a small problem here. We know that at STP, 22.4 liter of gas contains 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 molecules. So now at STP, how many molecules are there in 1 milliliter or 1 cc of gas? I wait for about half a minute. Any answer? Actually, I can't see the chat box. Shweta or Ashley, can you read the chat box and tell me?
Yeah, so no one has posted yet, but hopefully they are working on it. Please, you can please share your answer on the chat box.
Same as the number.
Sorry?
So they're saying that's the same number of.
No, but see, 22.4 liter contains 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 molecules. So 1 cc or 1 milliliter will contain how many molecules if at STP? Okay. Is there any answer? I mean, I really do not know how I can minimize it and see the, okay. But if I minimize it here, I think your view is also getting disturbed, right? Okay.
So some can't say. Some have given a number 6.022.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah. Some have done 2.7
into
10 to the power 19.
Right. So the answer is 2.69 into 10 to the power 19. Okay. So now you see 1 milliliter of a volume contains 2.7 into 10 to the power 19 molecules of gas. So that brings us to another number. It's not a number. It's the ratio of the mean free path to the system length scale. For normal fluids, gas and liquid, Knudsen number is much smaller than 1. Now that gives us assurance that the material can be assumed to be a continuum. The other thing is, of course, when we look at a liquid or a gas, we see that the material to be continuous. We don't get to see the molecules moving around. Okay, so the length scale that we are talking about is much larger for all practical purposes, for all practical applications. The length scale that we are talking about is much larger compared to the molecular length scale. So though the origin of the mechanism of conduction is based on the discrete nature of material, the continuum equation are valid. Continuum description is valid. Now, having established that, we can say that the heat flux can be with a very good approximation written as proportional to the gradient of temperature. And the proportionality constant is the thermal conductivity. For an insulating material, thermal conductivity is very less. For a highly conducting material, the value is very high. We know that. Having established that, we know for thermal conductivity for an isotropic material is a scalar quantity, and the unit is watt per meter Kelvin. There is yet another quantity, that is thermal diffusivity, which is the ratio of thermal conductivity to the heat capacity per unit volume, alpha. Now, using alpha, we write the heat diffusion equation, partial time derivative of temperature, which is equal to the thermal diffusivity into grad square T. This is the equation that one solves. We have shown one route to arrive at this equation. There is yet another approach known as shell balance approach, which is a very useful approach. At times, it is very handy, especially when we deal with problems like extended surface heat exchanger. So we take a material volume, differential volume, and we write down the balance equation, thermal energy balance here straight away, and we arrive at the same form, which is alpha del square T is equal to partial time derivative of temperature. Now we have special forms. If it is unsteady state, 1D unsteady state, that is temperature is a function of only one dimensional alone, we arrive at this form. If it is steady state, we have the three-dimensional dependence of temperature, spatial dependence only. We have 2D steady state, and we can write variety, we can add volume generation term, etc. Having written the governing equations, we look at the boundary conditions. There are three types of boundary condition. Type 1, where we define the temperature at the wall itself. Type 2, where we define the fluxes. And type 3, where convection surface conditions are used. Again, this is used in the extended surface heat exchanger. Typically, type 1 and a combination of type 1 and type 2 boundary conditions are used. Once you have written the governing equation and the boundary condition, we look at the solver. In open form, this type of problems can be solved using Laplacian form. And for examples, please visit cfd.fossee.in. Now we move to forced convection. In forced convection, convection itself is comprised of two mechanisms. One is random molecular motion and another is bulk or macroscopic motion of the fluid itself. Convection rate of convective heat transfer is given as HA delta T, where H is the heat transfer coefficient, A is the surface available for heat transfer, and delta T is the temperature difference. What is the physical significance of H? For that, we have to talk about boundary layer. So suppose there is a hot surface and above the hot surface, there is a layer of cold fluid flowing. Now, adjacent to the hot surface, there is a thin layer where the dominant mode of heat transfer is conduction. Okay. Now, just adjacent to the hot surface, we can get the heat flux from the conduction equation itself, which is minus k dt dy measured, the gradient measured at the wall. If we equate this flux, we get the heat transfer coefficient in terms of thermal conductivity, and we see that heat transfer coefficient is related to the property of the fluid itself. Now we look at the objective of the modeling activity. Depending on that, we choose the kind of model that we have to use. This shows a schematic of a typical heat exchanger. Now, if the objective is just to write down the design equation or to design a heat exchanger, the equation that we are going to use is Q dot is equal to UAF LMTD, log mean temperature difference. F is the correction factor, U is the overall heat transfer coefficient, A is the heat transfer exchange area, heat exchange area, and this is something, often this is the design question that we ask. However, if the question that we want to address is the detailed temperature profiling inside the heat exchanger, if we want to investigate whether there is a hot spot inside the heat exchanger, then we need to solve the complete equation, the thermal energy conservation equation, and we have to get to CFD. The governing equation, we have already seen that if there is a heat source, we have to add the term here. Please let us, the point to be noted here is that we have the velocity vector in the equation. Now, since there is a velocity vector in the equation, we also need to solve the momentum conservation equation. So the complete set of equation becomes the mass conservation equation, the momentum conservation equation, and the heat conservation equation, thermal energy conservation equation. This set of equation is written for incompressible fluid. That's why we could write the divergence of U is equal to 0. Now, as a next step, we have to write down the boundary condition. The boundary condition is the same. We have to add only the boundary condition for the velocity. We now move on to the example problem. Before we get into the example problem, I would like to talk about a problem solving technique. Famous mathematician George Polya, Hungarian mathematician, in his book, well circulated book, Polya's problem solving technique, has suggested 4 steps towards solving a problem. First step, understand the problem. Second, devise a plan. Third, carry out the plan. And fourth is look back. So the example problem that we have selected today, we will try to place that in this framework. First, the problem statement itself. The learning outcome of this problem statement is going to be formulate a problem. We will see how we are going to understand this problem. Write down the assumptions, draw a figure, simplify. That is going to be a part of devise a plan. Solve analytically and numerically. That is carry out the plan and then compare the results. That is look back. The problem statement which is going to be given to you. Determine the velocity and temperature profiles for the convective heat transfer in a horizontal pipe. What is the basis of selecting this problem? This is a simple problem to start with. In analytical solution exists because it's the first exercise that we are going to do with open foam on forced convection. So we have to have a basis for comparison. However, there is also a third point which is not written here. This is a simplified problem for certain practical geometry. So suppose if there is an electrically heated exchanger, this is a simplified problem for that case. This is also a simplified problem for solar heaters. So the schematic here is you have a constant heat flux at wall and it is a single pipe heat exchanger. Now devise a plan. There are only two steps here. First, we obtain an analytical solution, and as a next step, we obtain the numerical solution using open foam. We draw the picture. The picture becomes very clear. The cold fluid enters at the inlet, of course. Hot fluid goes out, and wall is at constant heat flux, which is, we have discussed the two application cases here. Carry out the plan. There are several steps to it. So carry out is here in this case, of course, solve it. The first step is velocity profile. We have to make certain assumptions here. Making the assumption, it's a developed flow, no slip at the wall, no slip at the wall, and axisymmetric. Okay. So the solution is a parabolic profile, maximum velocity at the center, quadratically going down to 0 at the walls. Step 2, the energy equation. We can simplify the energy equation. In place of U, we write down the parabolic profile, and we note that convection is in the axial direction. So we neglect the diffusion in the axial direction. We have the diffusion only in the radial direction. Also, there is no bulk motion in the radial direction. So there is no convection in the radial direction. We also write down the boundary conditions. Step 3, we non-dimensionalize the equation and the boundary conditions. This is a very important step, a very critical step in obtaining analytical solution. Why? Because if we non-dimensionalize the equations, we actually get a form of the equation where there is no parameter at all. So this becomes a single mathematical equation, and then we solve the equation, obtain the solution. Here we made yet another assumption. We said that temperature is fully developed, temperature profile is fully developed. What it means that the shape of the temperature profile does not change along the z direction. Asymptotically, the temperature profile is obtained. Once we have obtained the solution, we know the base case is ready. Now we move on to the numerical solution. Prepare for the numerical solution. There are 6 steps involved in it. First, we create the geometry, create the mesh, define the boundary conditions, define the properties, run the solver, and the last step is check the solution. Create the geometry, create the axisymmetric geometry, parabolic profile at the inlet. Now, this part is not as straightforward as we discussed in the analytical solution. Here we have to code. We have to define the parabolic profile here. Alternately, what we can do is we can extend this part and define the default uniform velocity profile. However, this length, we have to make sure that this length is sufficient for the flow to develop. Once we have defined the boundary conditions, we define the numerical values of all the thermophysical properties like density, viscosity, specific heat, and we define the Prandtl number. So from the Prandtl number, thermal conductivity is derived. After that, we decide on the convergence criteria. The solution is obtained. Then comes the 4th step, that is look back. Plot the temperature and the velocity profile. Compare with the analytical solution. If we are not satisfied with the comparison, suppose the difference is more than 5%, okay, then we go back and refine the mesh or use stringent convergence criteria and rerun the simulation. So the whole thing itself is an iterative process. With that, we come to a closure of the first session itself, and we look back on the introductory session on model heat transfer. A brief overview of principle of heat transfer is discussed. A very brief introduction to conduction and convection is presented. An approach to problem solving through an example of forced convection is discussed. The solution will be discussed in session 2, which is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Now, I will minimize this screen and take the questions.
Thank you, Professor Manaswita, for this wonderful intro to heat transfer on convection and conduction. I request everyone, if they have any questions, to please post on the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask Professor Manaswita. I think there's one question from Mr. Yogesh Kumar, Professor Manaswita. He is asking if we are using some complex fluid, like a nanofluid as coolant material in heat exchanger, which thermophysical properties would be required for this computational study?
Yes. So, right. So if you are using some complex fluid, nanofluid as coolant material in heat exchanger, which thermophysical properties required for computational study. So suppose if you are using some nanofluid, for that particular nanofluid, there will be like specific heat and thermal conductivity, viscosity, density defined, or there will be some relationship for that based on the nanofluid, the nanoparticles loading, temperature range that is being used. So you have to use those properties. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. So thank you. If anyone else has any question, please go ahead and post it. Okay. How can we simulate for non-continuum flow?
Okay. Very good question. So suppose if we have to simulate non-continuum flow, that means we are actually simulating the molecules. We will get into molecular dynamic simulation if we want to simulate individual molecules. Then we can also simulate using direct simulation Monte Carlo method, so which is DSMC method. Okay, either molecular dynamics or Monte Carlo method. Like for example, I want to there is a material and I do not know what its thermal conductivity is, and I want to determine its thermal conductivity from its interaction potential. So I use molecular dynamic simulation. I want to find out its diffusivity. I use molecular dynamic simulation. I only know its interaction potential, right?
But ma'am, computational will increase, I think.
Sorry, no, in that case you will definitely not simulate a huge geometry. Your geometry is going to be very small. So when we get into the molecular dynamics level simulation, we talk in terms of number of particles that we are simulating. So we will say that we are simulating a lakh of particles, and for say 10 lakhs time steps. We won't say that we are simulating a pipe of or a box of 1 meter by 1 meter or something of that sort, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but yes, true. Like if I want to simulate see, but when we are actually getting into a situation where your Knudsen number is small, I don't have to get into the molecular dynamic level simulation. And when I'm getting into the molecular dynamic level simulation, I don't have to do a large geometry. Then my scale is going to be how many numbers of particles I'm simulating and for how much time step, how many time steps, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you all. So there is some other question, Professor Manaswita. They want you to discuss a little bit more about mixed convection.
Forced and free together. So, in that case, you cannot use this incompressible fluid assumption. Now, there is this Bose-Einstein approximation, which you have to turn on, which you have to get into that modeling, and then you have to solve your problem. So if it is like, so it's something like this. if the temperature range that you are talking about, if density varies linearly with the temperature within that range, you go ahead with Bosenisk approximation. And if you feel that no, your fluid is compressible, then you solve the compressible. You relax the incompressibility condition completely, and then you go ahead and solve the compressible fluid.
Hello. That means when Bosenisk we can apply, then only the density variation will be taken into account.
Bosenisk, you are
yeah.
asking about Bosenisk.
Yeah, but
so in Bosenisk approximation, you will all other terms will have constant density measured at certain reference temperature, except the body force term.
Body force term.
Yes.
So what about other things, other properties?
Sorry.
What about other properties? If we
what about
take other properties, if we want to see the if we want to take the variation of other properties also.
Dependence on of temperature.
Yes.
You can always define, like, thermal conductivity, viscosity. Like, for example, let me give you an example. So the form that I have written in the equation, that form will change, and you can, in the solver, if I get into the solver part, you can always define temperature dependent viscosity, thermal conductivity, specific gravity.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
So another question is if there are any simulation templates for a simple shell and tube heat exchanger to quickly check temperature hotspot in any existing exchanger.
This, I think I will let Divyesh or Ashley answer.
Hi, Praveen. We have few case studies available on shell and tube heat exchanger using conjugate heat transfer. So after this QA session, I'll share those links with you.
Battery cooling system, yes, you can.
Okay, so I think with that, we'll end the session on heat transfer. Thank you so much, Professor Manaswita, once again. We do have some very detailed hands-on session on convective heat transfer tomorrow lined up for you. Please refer to your schedule.